The death penalty has served as a punishment for severe crimes for hundreds of years. Other cruel and unusual punishments formed during this medieval era, such as maiming, branding, whipping, etc., have since been abolished over time due to their harsh nature. It is truly astonishing that capital punishment has not been left in the past, along with these other heinous practices. As human beings, we carry a level of morality that has only been enhanced through advancements in technology and ideology. As time progresses and new ideas form alongside, it comes as no surprise that certain unethical punishments have been removed from cultures entirely. But somehow the death penalty still remains. As a former criminology student, I was frequently asked to analyze the development as well as the pros and cons of the death penalty. Capital punishment may appear to make sense at first glance of the benefits, but in reality the negative side effects carry a much heavier toll than any good that comes out of it. About half of the states in the U.S. have already evolved and abolished the death penalty, but it needs to be nationally outlawed for reasons being, it is not always applied fairly and indiscriminately, innocent people are sometimes sentenced to death, and there is no statistical evidence showing that it actually works as a deterrence for capital crimes. In a perfect world, it is nice to believe that everybody receives fair and equal treatment, but that is not always the case. It is especially not the case when it comes to who is sentenced to receive the death penalty. The idea that the death penalty is served out unjustly is not one that can be interpreted loosely. It is based on statistical evidence. The most glaring characteristic that is shared among those who are placed on death row is that they all come from a background of poverty. Approximately 90% of those charged with capital crime could not afford to hire a lawyer when they were initially tried. Another huge factor that works to determine if a defendant will receive the death penalty is the race of the victim. Over 3/4 of the cases in which the death penalty was handed out involved a white victim. Cases involving a white defendant and a black victim have witnessed an execution around 20 times since 1976, while the numbers for cases with a black defendant and a white victim, vice versa, is nearly 300. The fact of the matter is that the death penalty is handed out extremely unfairly and often depends on characteristics such as race and social class. And this is definitely something that needs to change. Another huge error in capital punishment is that it is not always foolproof, as innocent people are sometimes sentenced to death. There is absolutely no way to accurately determine that 100% of those placed on death row are guilty of the crimes they are being charged with. Sure, there are a majority of those charged did commit the crime without a doubt, but what about those who didn't? Can you imagine what it would feel like awaiting the date for your execution for a crime you didn't even commit? With the advancements in new technologies, we are seeing more and more death row inmates being exonerated for crimes they committed years ago, as there are new ways to determine their innocence. Nationally, at least one person is exonerated for every 10 that are executed. This shows that the judicial system does sometimes make errors in their rulings. These errors are not always reversed. The third flaw in capital punishment is that it does not serve as an effective form of deterrence. The idea of deterrence is that the severity of the punishment deters people from committing a certain crime. So in other words, one would not want to commit a murder for fear of receiving a hefty prison sentence or the death penalty. This idea is good in thought, as it makes sense that stricter punishments would deter people from committing crime, but it actually holds no ground. Typically, when criminals commit a capital crime, they are well aware of the risks that come with it, yet they still choose to carry it out. Capital crimes are continuing at a rate they always have. If the death penalty does not serve as a deterrence for crime, why employ it at all? There are a plethora of other reasons as to why the death penalty should be abolished, but after considering just 3, it is still very obvious. It serves no purpose, as it does not deter others from committing crimes. It is flawed and immoral, as innocent people are sometimes put to death at the hands of the government that is set out to protect them. And it is handed out based on discriminate factors such as race and social class, which place many in a much more vulnerable position than others. The death penalty is a form of cruel and unusual punishment that should have been left in the medieval ages, along with the other torturous practices of that era. Thank you.